Hey, it's me, Hannah. I am currently suffering from an ailment, what I think is colloquially known as closet full of clothes, nothing to wear. And I don't know if it's the result of my getting older and maturing, or my ever-changing body, or the influence of capitalism, but I am currently fighting the urge to just buy a whole new wardrobe. Get a fresh start as we head into spring. However, with my fun money budgeted for travel and other events coming up this year, and heading into some delightful boycotts and economic blackouts, I thought, let's skip the consumerism and shop my closet instead. Now I'm gonna save you the mess of my spring closet clean out, partially because I didn't film the late night hyperfixation whirlwind, and partially because my bedroom is a source of embarrassment. There's literally nothing going on in here, except for my piles of clothing that I'm organizing. Should I whimsify this space next? Get in the comments if you think this room should get a Renaissance revival. Anyway, I thought it would be fun if I brought you along with me as I take these articles of clothing, which I guess I'm just not ready to put into my donate pile, and see what we can do to make them more whimsical and more playful, or just something I'm actually gonna wanna wear. So I have a few pieces here that I just don't really wear regularly because of the color. Like this pink jumpsuit. I do really like the fit, and I find it really comfortable, but this pink is just too pink for me for a normal day. So I thought I would dye it a color that I'm more likely to wear. I'm gonna give it a go with this wine color, but if that doesn't work, and this will be a recurring theme, I'll dye it black. I also have this pretty white dress, but I tend to associate any sort of white dress with something wedding adjacent, like something you would wear to a bridal shower if you were the bride, I guess. And I know it's silly, I'm just explaining why I don't go to put this on regularly. But I do really like the dress, so I thought I would lean into the almost antique feel of it and try a technique that I haven't tried before, tea dyeing. So let's figure out how to do that. Okay, so first things first, I am going to warm up some water. I'm gonna get some water boiling. I have 2 vats on the stove right now. One is my designated Rit Dye vat. I do not cook with this. Do not consume food out of what you put your dye in, unless you're using a natural dye like tea. So I have my tea dye vat separated, and I'm just gonna start by making some tea. I have a bunch of tea bags. I don't even know what tea we have. Chai tea. So I have black tea, I have a bunch of chai tea. I feel like pomegranate blueberry would be the wrong color. Okay, I have exactly 69 tea bags. Nice. I went with black tea. Apparently black tea tends to have more tannins in it. The tannins help maintain the color, apparently. I'm very new to this. So I'm just gonna drop these in here. I'm gonna drop the heat down to medium lowish, and get to steeping. So I'm gonna steep these for about 15 minutes at least, and kind of see where we land with the color. I'm also trying to be really gentle because I don't want to break any tea bags, but if I do, I can always kind of strain them through something before actually adding them to the dye bath. So when I originally looked at this tag, I guess I just saw what I wanted to see and saw that the sleeve and bottom of the dress were made of 100% cotton. I am now looking at it again and realizing that the body of the dress, a separate fabric, is made of 100% rayon. With half a Google search, I am led to believe that the rayon will still take the tea dye. However, I imagine it's just gonna take it differently than the sleeves. So the body of the dress and the sleeves might end up being different colors. But I'm okay with that. I think it's balanced nicely with the sleeves and the bottom of the dress being the same versus the body of the dress. So we're gonna see, you know? We're getting very experimental today. feel bad drinking coffee while I'm doing all of this tea dyeing. I used all of the tea, so what else am I supposed to drink? So while I let the tea bags finish straining, I'm going to go ahead and prep the fabric, the dress. Because I am slightly concerned about the rayon, I'm gonna do a little bit of prep work with the dress before I dunk it into the tea bath by doing a little vinegar and water bath. I think I would have preferred 1 part vinegar to 4 parts water, which is one recommendation I saw online. But this is all the vinegar I have, so I'm gonna use this and a little bit of water and just kind of see where it takes me. I guess I'm just gonna wait to make sure that this gets fully saturated, let it soak for a little bit, you know, a couple minutes, not any real significant amount of time. And then I'll dump it and we can prep the tea bath. I'm definitely gonna need to add some water to this in order to get it to be high enough to actually cover the dress, but let me get the dress in there first and then we can see. Oh, it's already such a beautiful warm color. Oh my gosh, look how orange it is. That was unexpected. Maybe it'll come out looking a little more yellow than like tan or brown or whatever. Once we get the water in there, that might adjust things too. So I'm on the stovetop. The tea has cooled down a lot, so it's fine. I'm just using my hands to get this in here real quick. Yeah, let's get some water in here. Let me show you what we're looking at. Okay, so while the tea bath is antiquifying, that's a word, right? The white dress, hopefully that all takes and we have a nice lovely thing, but I'm gonna let that simmer for another couple hours and then take it off the heat, and I'll probably let it sit overnight in the dye bath. While that's cooking, I'm gonna go ahead and get a Rit Dye bath going for my, aw, Jane. Can I at least have my jumpsuit? What about the jacket? For my jumpsuit, I'm gonna try this this wine color. It's an all-purpose dye, like a stretch denim of some sort. So I am going to just give this a good old-fashioned try. And if it doesn't take, I can always try with the black dye. That's gonna be kind of my fallback for literally any of this. If I don't end up liking the dye color, we'll just dye it black instead. So I think we're getting up to the correct temperature here, which I believe is 140 degrees. So I'll use a half bottle of the Rit Dye, a teaspoon of dish detergent, and 1 cup of salt. So let me prep that and we can get cooking. Start with just the belt. Make sure I take that out of the pants before. Oh, look at that color. Eee, I'm so excited. And again, if none of this works, I wasn't wearing these clothes to begin with. So it's a fun experiment. We're having fun, okay? Oh, geez. That feels like it's such a bright color. Just keep going. Just keep going. It's certainly gonna be a different color. All right, I'm gonna set a 30-minute timer and kind of see where we land after this. I'm gonna say no. I don't think this is the look. One, it's a little splotchy. I guess I just didn't do a good enough job, didn't leave enough space in there. I definitely tossed in 1 or 2 extra items and none of those turned out either. And probably my biggest gripe is the fact that like the thread used on the seams and the zipper also didn't get dyed. Not the same composition as the rest of the garment. So who'd have thought? On top of the fact that Rit Dye doesn't have this color in the like synthetic version of their dye, which would have the possibility of actually making the color change on the zipper and the thread. I also feel like this is still like a bit more of a statement than I'm looking for if I want to be able to wear this regularly. I don't think this big color block is what I'm going for. So I'm gonna pivot and I'm gonna use the synthetic black dye. It's pretty much the same process, so I'll go ahead and save you some time and do it off camera. We'll see this piece in the reveal. Alrighty, day 2 of whimsifying my closet. I think the pieces that I have been working on and sharing with you have turned out pretty good so far, but now I want to switch it up. I don't think that changing the color of something necessarily adds whimsy. It switches it up and it makes it something, I'm more likely to wear, which is probably the #1 priority here. But what I really want to do is make my apparel a little more whimsical, a little more of a storytelling piece for myself, something that I feel like I could be a little more creative with. So these pants. These are great pants. I love the fabric. I love almost everything about the fit, except I don't love that they're a little short on me, a little shorter than I would like them to be anyway. When I wear them the way that I like to wear them, which is maybe a little higher waisted than they were originally intended to be, they get a little high water on me, if you know what I mean. So for these pants, I want to keep things relatively easy and just go ahead and add some of this kind of wide trim with a little bit of a ruffle to the bottom of the pants to get that little bit of a lengthening effect while adding a little bit of whimsy. And then I want to try and do the same thing at the bottom of this jumper / overalls getup as well. I think that that's just an easy way to get that kind of lengthening effect, and with this particular trim, I think we're leaning a little circusy clown core, which is just so fun, and that's what I'm going for. So let's break out the sewing machine. So I am not good at accessories. Don't get me wrong, I love jewelry and I love when I do have the opportunity to actually spend time thinking about how to accessorize. But I also really like an article of clothing that has a little embellishment built in. I don't know, call me lazy, but I like to think I'm being efficient. So taking inspiration from some of my favorite pieces, I want to spend the rest of this video working out a way to add some embellishment, specifically embroidery, to a couple different pieces that I've picked out. I'm going to break out my free motion presser foot on my sewing machine and hopefully be able to kind of churn out some of this stuff pretty quick. But if necessary, hand embroidery is still on the table. This is the part that feels like I'm going to be able to get a little more creative and a little more magical and whimsical with what I'm doing to my clothing that's going to make me more excited to wear it. So I'm feeling pretty excited. Let's see if I can find that presser foot. After sketching out a very simple scroll design at the neckline using my heat erasable pen, I chose to very slowly follow the lines in the pattern using some gold embroidering machine thread. My machine
hates this thread, and it literally killed my last machine when I worked on my Asterian jacket, but we did a pretty good job dealing with it this time. After I had the first line down in thread, I went back over it to add a bit more weight to it.
Look at this garbage. I accidentally got the facing in the back of the embroidery, so I'm gonna need to either remove this embroidery or cut the facing differently. I don't know. I'm not even necessarily sold on having facing there, so we'll come up with something, I'm sure. All right, so I mentioned that I had a couple other pieces that I wanted to dye back when I was doing all of my different dye baths, and I attempted a few different pieces. Most of them were failures, so they ended up in the dye it black pile. However, by the forces of magic and chemistry, most of those items honestly didn't even end up black. And yeah, I know it's a charcoal dye, but you would still think it would be closer to black or a dark gray. Not the case for most pieces. One of those little weirdos was this dress, which used to be a sort of goldenrod yellow, like very bright yellow color, and now is more of a army green. And I think I like the color. Like, I think I would wear this more. But since the dye job wasn't very good and it got a little splotchy here and there, I think it's a good candidate for some extra embellishments just to draw the eye. So with my free motion presser foot, I want to add some gold embellishment to this front panel. And what I'm thinking is I'll just do columns of gold stitches. If I set my machine to a zigzag stitch using the free motion presser foot, I can essentially do really tight stitches back and forth to get that sort of embroidered effect. And I think I can use that to sort of color block that front panel. So let's give it a try and see where we land. Well, I guess I'm tea dyeing, adding trim to, and embroidering every piece of clothing I own. I genuinely love every piece that I have touched throughout this whole video. Even my jumpsuit, which I've already worn twice since I dyed it black. Well, gray. And the tea-dyed dress has turned out absolutely beautifully. And that whole process was so pleasant with all of those lovely tea-based smells. I think the black pants with the new trim might be my favorites. And once it gets a little nicer outside, I'll probably pull out those 2 shorter dresses and the jumpsuit, and they'll see the light of day a little bit more. Definitely more than they previously did, which was never. They never did. I feel like this exercise has been exactly what it needed to be. And most importantly, I feel like I've genuinely overcome the need to go out and shop for new clothes. We have new clothes at home. And it helps that it has been just a really creative endeavor and, of course, fun. And as always, if you have had as much fun as I did, it would mean the world to me if you would like and subscribe. And if you do, I'll see you in 2 weeks for my next video. Take care.